Sometimes the best way to get to know a theory is to consider objections to it. With that in mind, let us consider two early objections to Bratman's theory of shared intention, which I think illuminate aspects of it. Now, you remember that Bratman's theory involves specifying a functional role, some constraints on inferential and normative integration, and also offers some sufficient conditions for shared intention. Now, in order for the following objections to work, we only need a very tiny part of Bratman's theory, and this part is the most controversial part, the idea that for us to have a shared intention, it is a necessary part of some sufficient conditions that we intend, each of us, you and I, to paint. So what Searle says is, look, you can't have any such intention. Searle says, using a different example, a team intention is in part expressed by, we are painting the house. But neither of the individual painters could have this as the entire content of their intention, for no one can paint the house all by themselves. Right. So Searle. Now Bratman extracts an objection for this by offering what he calls the own action condition. So he says, look, the objection is this. Searle is insisting on the own action condition, the condition that the subject of an intention must be the intended agent of the intended activity. If we think that's true, then it isn't rational for us either of us to intend that we paint the house together, because after all, we can't perform that intention unless another agent also paints the house. So the objection. Now Bratman's response to this is kind of interesting. So Bratman says, the own action condition is false. Bratman imagines a situation where Aisha and Beatrice are great friends, and Aisha knows full well that any time she needs to go for a coffee with Beatrice, she can phone Beatrice up and say, look, Beatrice, I really need to have coffee with you. And Beatrice will drop whatever it is that she is doing and rush off and have coffee with her friend. So, says Bratman, Aisha can perfectly well intend that Beatrice has coffee with her. That's an intention that Aisha can have. And you might imagine this scenario. So some of Beatrice's friends are planning a surprise party for her, and they need to get her out of the flat so that they can decorate the flat and prepare everything without her realizing what's going on. So they contact Aisha and they say, look, Aisha, we really need Beatrice to go and have coffee to get out of the flat. And so Aisha simply forms the intention that Beatrice leave the flat. And it's that intention that she acts on when she phones Beatrice up and says, hey, let's have coffee. If you think that's right, it seems innocent enough to me, then the own action condition that Searle imagines is just false. And so the objection fails. What we need to ask, therefore, in order to evaluate Searle's objection is what Bratman asks. Is the own action condition a genuine requirement on intention or not? If it is, Bratman is in big trouble. If it's not, then everything is good as far as that first objection goes. All right, very good. So it might be good to have some discussion about that in the question time. A second objection is due to the philosopher David Velleman, who notices that intentions are attitudes that resolve deliberative questions, thereby settling issues. So Bratman refers to this as the settle condition. In order for something to be an intention, it has to settle the issue. If, after much lengthy consideration, I decide that I shall go out and buy a pair of shoes, that issue is now, by the intention, settled. It's not something that's open for further discussion or constraints unless circumstances change very radically. Now Bratman and Velleman agree that the settle condition is a genuine condition. So this is unlike the previous objection where Searle's condition just seemed to be a mistake. Bratman and Velleman agree that the settle condition is right, and I think there's a good reason to do that. One of the things that distinguishes intention from desire is precisely that intentions, but not desires, settle issues. So unless we want to move away from having a robust notion of intention, in which case what are we doing hanging out with Bratman, we probably ought to accept the settle condition. But, says Velleman, the settle condition creates a problem for Bratman. Here's the problem. You intend that we paint the house together. Okay, very good. The settle condition is met, so that intention settles the matter. We now paint the house together. I know that you intend that we paint the house together. I can't now rationally also intend that we paint the house together, because after all, there is nothing further for that intention to settle. The matter is already settled by your intention. So how could it possibly be now settled by my intention? It looks like a mistake. But then it can't be the case that we both have that intention. So here we have a rather elegant and beautiful, subtle objection to both Bratman's theory and actually also the simple theory of joint action. Two people can't rationally have an intention that they paint the house together or do anything else together, because each of those intentions would have to settle the matter, but it being one matter, it's not possible for it to be twice settled. So the debate here that we want to consider is whether Bratman's theory really does violate the settle condition. Is there a way that Bratman can accept the settle condition but show that his theory doesn't violate it? Well, Bratman thinks there is, and this is one of the most unusual cases I've encountered in philosophy, because Velleman published this objection in 1997, but in later work acknowledged that Bratman's response was entirely right and that his objection was wrong. And that's something that you very rarely see in philosophy. I think it's a good thing because Velleman's objection is a good one, and the reason why it fails as an objection to Bratman is quite interesting, and it involves Bratman elaborating on his theory. So here's what Bratman says in response to Velleman's objection. The objection, you remember, is that we can't have two intentions that both settle the same matter that we will paint. Well, Bratman says, look, the first thing is this. If we both do as we intend, we will paint, right? We both know that. So all that's really needed to settle the matter is an intention to this effect. Secondly, says Bratman, it may well be the case that our intentions that we paint are what Bratman calls persistent interdependent. This means that the continuing persistence of your intention depends on the persistence of mine, and conversely. So if you suddenly realise that actually you need to buy those new shoes and you can't possibly paint the house, then not only will you cease to intend that we paint the house, but so will I. My intention also will go away, because my intention is persistent interdependent with yours. And now Bratman says, where we have persistence interdependence, we can regard the settling of the matter as due to the intentions collectively. The two intentions, yours and mine, do settle the matter, but that's to be understood collectively and not distributively. It's not that my intention settles the matter and your intention settles the matter. It's rather our persistent interdependent intentions which jointly settle the matter. I should say which collectively settle the matter. So that allows us to agree that intentions are attitudes that settle issues, but also accept that there may be situations where we both have an intention concerning the same matter, our painting the house or our cooking dinner, whatever it might be, because intentions can settle matters collectively as well as distributively. And that, of course, is a beautiful reply to Velleman's objection. So where are we? We've considered the two main early objections to Bratman's theory of shared intention, and we've seen that in both cases Bratman can give somewhat convincing replies to these objections. The question for you now is whether Bratman's theory of shared intention is true.